Hello and welcome to the latest EnvCast episode. EnvCast is a Society for the Environment podcast, bringing you environmental professionals in conversation each month. Each episode is designed to provide insight into the life of registered environmental professionals, featuring experts from across a wide range of sectors and disciplines. We explore what they do, why they do it, how they got to where they are now, and their future ambitions. Each guest has verified their environmental credentials by achieving Chartered Environmentalist, Registered Environmental Practitioner, or Registered Environmental Technician registration. To learn more about the Society for the Environment or our environmental registrations, please visit socenv.org.uk. That's socenv.org.uk. Enjoy the episode. Hello, I'm Phil from the Society for the Environment and welcome to this month's EnvCast episode. Today I am very pleased to be joined by a Chartered Environmentalist I've known a little bit about for a number of years, mainly because they provided one of the very first registrant profiles on the SocEnv website. Plus, it's probably worth adding that the Institution of Agricultural Engineers, whom they are, our guest is a member of, they sing their praises on a fairly regular basis. So, which they might not know about, but it's always nice. They work within the UK water sector and gained their Chartered Environmentalist registration in 2016 with the Institution of Agricultural Engineers, or IAGRE for short. So I'm very pleased to welcome Alex Cooke. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
That's quite all right. Whereabouts are you joining us from today?
I'm in very foggy South Leicestershire today.
Very foggy South Leicestershire. Well,
very foggy, yeah.
That's interesting. I'm joining you from very foggy West Leicestershire.
Oh, West Leicestershire.
We should have talked about this before.
We should have just met up, yeah.
We are saving carbon and all sorts there. So we meet via the power of the internet. I mean, I must admit, I'm fairly disappointed that you're not calling from a riverbank, a foggy riverbank in the Leicestershire countryside somewhere, but I'll let it pass for now.
I mean, there's one right down the road. I can hop down there if you like.
It depends how the signal is, I suppose. We'll do that next time. So, as always, on EnvCast, to start proceedings, I'm going to hand straight over to you to give us a flavour of what you currently do as a job. So over to you.
Okay, well, yes, I'm a Principal Catchment Scientist at Severn Trent Water. So I've been with Severn Trent it's coming up to 5 years now in a couple of weeks' time. But I originally joined them as a catchment management scientist, and I've progressed my way up to principal over that time. So I guess as a very high level blurb of what our team does, we're responsible for the business's catchment management program. So that's working with farmers and landowners. Okay,
interesting. Which probably relates to what I just said about sitting on a riverbank in the Leicestershire countryside. Yeah. That might have been a bit strange if without that explanation. So a Principal Catchment Scientist.
Yes.
What do you do on a day-to-day kind of basis? I guess it probably changes every day, but
yeah, it does. It's quite a diverse role, and that's why I really love it, to be honest. No 2 days are the same. I get everything from going out on site to work with farmers, work with charities, landowners, helping them to understand what they could do on their farm or within that specific project, through to working with our regulators to understand the water quality risks and what the business can do to reduce those risks at our abstraction points, through to one of the big things I'm doing now is working out our strategy for our team for the 2025 to 2030 period. So completely different ends of the spectrum, but all very important and very relevant to the water sector. And where we are right now.
Okay, well, that certainly sounds like a diverse role. What area do you geographically cover?
I am region-wide. I don't have a specific area. So I'm not one of the people that goes out day to day that has a specific catchment area that they focus on, where they're engaging with farmers within that area. That I'm not one of those people, but I work alongside them. So I will effectively work out the science and the strategy what needs to be delivered, and that could be from our regulators or from the business internally. And then we pass it over to our delivery teams, which are our agricultural advisors on the ground, and they do the day-to-day work with the farmers.
I see. So for those who don't know about Severn Trent and the UK water sector, you're very much Midlands based.
Yes, so we're East Midlands, West Midlands. We stretch from the top of the Humber, like Scunthorpe area, all the way down to the mouth of the River Severn, and then we go across into West Wales as sort of Machynlleth area, as well as where I am now on the South Leicestershire border. So really big area, to be honest.
It's quite a big area.
Yeah, very big area. Very diverse landscapes. Actually, it creates very diverse farming systems, very diverse water quality risks as well for the business. We've got lots of arable in the area that I'm in now, and then obviously Wales, you've got lots of hill farmers, completely different landscapes to sort of the Warwickshire area. So that very diverse area, and that allows us to have a lot of innovation in the projects that we work on, which makes the role even more exciting.
Yeah, I imagine so. What kind of innovation are we talking? What kind of pieces of technology do you use, and how does that work? Humour my lack of knowledge here.
Yeah, so when I say innovation, I mean we do use technology. We satellites, remote sensing. Last week I was looking with a supplier on drones that spray crops. So there is technology involved in the role. But what I do in my role with innovation is more around big projects, I guess, sort of catchment scale projects that are utilising new methods or processes, or it could be that we're taking that catchment approach where we're pulling in all the stakeholders that work in that catchment to deliver good for that catchment collectively, rather than in our little silos. So not quite where the technology aspect that you were mentioning, but innovative for the water industry, and innovative in the processes that we're using within the environment sector, I guess.
That makes a lot of sense. Is a lot of your role to do with ensuring water quality, or does it span a lot of different areas?
Yeah, so broadly, our bread and butter is preventing things from going on at source, predominantly in the agricultural sector, so that it doesn't end up in the rivers or the aquifers where we're abstracting from. That's sort of the bread and butter of our role. Increasingly, we're taking that approach that we've learned from that program, because we've been doing that sort of work now for the last sort of 10 years. So we understand, we've got a good program, we understand how it works now, we've got a lot of experience, but we're taking that approach and sort of moving it across to the wastewater side of our business as well. So looking at where we can support farmers and landowners to reduce their own fair share of nutrients going onto the land and into the rivers, so it helps to improve river health on the wastewater side of the business as well. And then increasingly we're doing more broader environmental work as well. So I've got quite a few projects now where I'm linking in with our Severn Trent biodiversity and ecology team. So looking at triple SIs, or what else have we got? Yeah, triple SIs. We've got a forestry team where we're looking at hedgerow planting and connectivity across the landscape. As well as our in-hand farm. Most people don't know that Severn Trent are actually a farmer as well. We've got several farms dotted around the region, and it's looking at our own estate and what we can do there as well to improve the environment.
Severn Trent have farms?
Yes, we do. That. Yes.
Well, if I haven't learned anything today, I'll take that away and find out where. I don't know why I'd find out where the farms are, but it might be interesting. I know it's just very interesting. Nice. So there's a lot of things to get involved in, it's fair to say. So that must require quite a broad range of skills, I imagine. So what kind of skills and qualifications did you need to be able to do the job that you're doing now?
So I guess I didn't really think I'd end up in this job, if I'm honest, or in the water sector. I certainly hadn't planned like this is my career route, if you know what I mean. I did environmental geoscience as a degree, which gave me a broad understanding of geology through to meteorology, through to sort of coastal processes and hydrology. So very, very broad. But it was for me anyway, it was the soil science and the pedology elements on that degree that caught my eye. And I loved learning about the soil plant interactions. I did a project in Mediterranean France, and that's what really led me to do my master's, which was all around soil science and land restoration. And it was off the back of that I got a job in a consultancy as an environmental soil scientist. And I did that for a combination of full-time and part-time roles for a number of years. But it was only after my PhD that I realised that I probably wasn't best suited to consultancy. I liked a bit more of the innovation. I think my role right now, I have to be quite dynamic, and consultancy for me was a bit less dynamic than what I needed my career to be, I guess. So this role came up at Severn Trent for a catchment scientist, and it was just for a maternity role at the time, a 1-year sort of contract role. But I was lucky enough to be kept on. They've managed to find a permanent position for me. And it was really my PhD in applied catchment science, really, is what it boils down to, that allowed me to excel in this role at Severn Trent. I probably wouldn't have been able to do that without that PhD.
Did you do your PhD after your work within the consultancies?
Yes, I did. Yes, I went back. So I did for a couple of years, the first 2 years of the PhD, I was doing sort of a bit of PhD and consultancy work. Yeah. And that was really to keep my foot in the game, to help me get where I wanted to go with my career, because I going back and taking what some might view as a bit of a career break, I didn't want to sort of lose momentum. And so whilst I was doing my PhD, I really pushed myself to do other things as well, like the part-time and the casual consultancy work. I did a bit of soil science training for the British Society of Soil Science. So I do some of their working with soil courses. I'd be one of the trainers. So just things like that sort of kept me sort of moving on, I guess, whilst I was back studying.
Well, it sounds like all of that led to what you're doing now. So that effort to continue to do multiple things at the same time and keeping your hands into various things, that's proved worthwhile, I assume. It's a good message to have to with people as well. To I suppose it keeps your options open a little bit as well, does it? It must do.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, if you don't know where you want to go and what you want to do, which I never did, I knew that I just wanted to do something that I really enjoyed. And I had two options, really. I had the environmental side, which I really enjoyed and I loved being outdoors, and that's where that sort of stemmed from. And then art, and I'm never going to make it as an artist. You do a broad degree, if you know what I mean, and then you could do an applied degree. And I'm always somebody that likes to keep learning. And so my experience throughout that time I've kept adding sort of strings to my bow as I've found something that I've been interested in and I've enjoyed, so that I can get that experience. And then it might not be directly relevant to what I'm doing now, but most of the time, if not all of the time, I've been able to draw on it in the future for a completely different project that I never thought I would need to use it for.
Yeah. Is this your creative artist side, always wanting to learn more about new things?
Maybe. Who knows? Yeah.
Could be. But the route that you went down, instead of the consultancy side, did that allow you to be slightly more hands-on and that appealed to you a bit more?
Yeah, it did. I think consultancy is a really important part of environmental planning, but for me, I found it quite restrictive in that I often didn't see a project through to completion. There's some projects where you might not really want to do that work. Essentially, it's not something that you yourself would choose to do. But you're a consultant, and you, as a junior consultant, you don't get much choice, I guess. Okay. So for me, I found consultancy. I learned a lot, but it just wasn't for me as a career, I guess. I needed something that was a bit more applied in the environmental world, and I could take a project and own it and do it all the way through from beginning to completion. And Severn Trent, this role at Severn Trent really has allowed me to do that. Whilst I'm often spinning many plates, I've got lots of different projects on the go. They're all for that. They've got their own individual targets, but then they've got that wider piece of the benefit that collectively they're going to give us and the environment once they're pulled together.
Yeah, I guess they're all working towards a similar collective goal, which allows you to drive your own work forwards to go towards that. That makes sense. In terms of, you mentioned plate spinning and that kind of thing. What are the kind of challenges that you face within your current role?
Right now, I'm just very busy, to be honest, as is everyone, I'm sure. I think my biggest challenge is marrying up the different interests of our different stakeholders. So we've got regulators who are, often trying to balance what we want to do against their different regulations that they have to monitor us against. We've got, farmers and charities that just want to get on and do things on the ground, and they're raring to go and they really want to get on and do something, but we have to sort of temper their their expectations a bit. And then I guess we've got customers and our investors as well, and what they're expecting of us. I mean, thankfully, I'm in an area in the environment where customers and everybody, all of those stakeholders are wanting to do this work because they're all interested in the environment. They all want to protect the environment. So I'm lucky in that sense. But one of the biggest challenges is marrying up those different sort of viewpoints so that we can find the sort of nugget in the middle where they all overlap, and that's what we can drive through to project completion. Yeah,
I imagine that's a massive challenge for a lot of different jobs. Essentially, stakeholder management is key, and the environment comes into that conversation a lot. With managing, how does that fit in with the financial expectations and all that kind of stuff? Always challenging. And I don't know if this features in the answer to the next question, but what's the favorite part of your job? Does that involve people? Is it the science, or is it being out there and monitoring things?
Yeah, so I guess in a way a bit of all of that, if I'm honest. I love the team that I'm in. We're such a fun team, and people, when you've got a team that are all thinking the same thing, we're all striving for the same thing. It makes work itself very, very fun. But I do love the science. I mean, I am a Principal Catchment Scientist. At the end of the day, I love the working out the problems. I love the problem solving that this role brings with it, and it's challenging at times. It definitely is, but the reward at the end of solving those problems, there's the reward for the company, but then there's the reward for the environment as well, and that's what I like at the end of it.
Absolutely. And do you get out and about much, or are you fairly office based, or a bit of both?
I'm predominantly office based these days. Yeah, I do get out and about. Probably once a week, maybe I'm out and about somewhere around the region for different projects.
So is your head office Coventry?
It is, yes.
Ah, just used to be under the underpass from the old Society for the Environment head office,
Right.
when we had a head office. Well, we virtual one these days. We could see your building from our window. Had a couple of meetings there as well. It's very nice.
Oh.
Very nice. So I think you've answered this really, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just for clarification. Do you feel like you make a difference in your role?
I do, yes.
That's
I
good.
definitely do. Yeah.
It must be a
across
good
the
feeling.
board. Yeah, it is. I really do love my role. Yeah, it's very rewarding.
Good. So you feel like you've landed on your feet with that one then?
Yes, I really have.
Excellent. Well, that's always nice to hear. It's good to have positive stories. So let's move back a few years then.
Okay.
When did you first develop an awareness of the environment and the challenges within, or just the general beauty of it, or whatever it might be?
Yeah. So I remember very clearly when I first comprehended the environment, and it was on a drive to South Wales with my mum and dad and my sister in the car. And my dad, well, he was in the army, but he was doing all the mapping and cartography for the Ordnance Survey in the army. And at this point in my life, I didn't know anything about mapping. But I remember my dad explaining very clearly the hill that was on this side of the car window at the time, and how it linked to all the different processes with the U-shaped valley that we were currently driving through, and how that linked then to what we saw on the map. And it was that sort of, it was that moment really that I remember, like, realizing I knew nothing and I needed to know more about what I was seeing out the window. And it just sort of snowballed from there, really.
Grabbed your attention from out the window.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Makes sense. So a few years on from then, you became a chartered environmentalist in 2016. What does being a chartered environmentalist mean to you? Why did you go through that process?
Oh, it means everything to me. I mean, I knew as soon as I got my job in consultancy, they made it very clear that they valued chartered people who were chartered environmentalist, chartered engineer, whichever one it was that was relevant to the person. But I was only sort of a year in at that point, and because I'd become aware of it quite early on, I made sure that I was doing CPD very, very early on, and so that's allowed me to become chartered quite early on, I guess. But for me personally, it means that I know that every this is recognised no matter what industry I go into, whether it's, you know, it could be anywhere across the world. Even I am recognised as somebody who understands the environment, appreciates it in the right way, and manages it manages it whilst meeting the right principles. You know, the Society for the Environment principles. I know that it's widely recognised that I am somebody who understands that, and so it opens up your doors really as well, doesn't it? Because of that. So yeah, for me it means everything.
Well, that is very good to hear. Hopefully a key message that we might use again, but we'll see. And you mentioned about, you know, starting the process, if you thought about it fairly early in your career, and I hope you don't mind me saying, but you're a fairly young chartered environmentalist, which is certainly not a bad thing at all. And I mean, you're still a young chartered environmentalist now, but in 2016 you were even younger, obviously. But so why was it a key thing that you knew about going through university, or did you first become aware of it during your consultancy times, and you were pretty driven to get it fairly on?
So I knew about it when I was doing my masters, I think.
Right.
So I Agri accredited my masters, and I remember them coming round to our class and telling us about themselves, but also telling us about chartered environmentalists. And that's probably when I first became aware of it. But I was doing my masters at that point, so I did as much training and other stuff as I could, but it was really when I went into consultancy, that I made sure that I hit the CPD hard and hit the extra training hard and gained as much as I could from all the different projects that I was working on. And the thing for me is that I made sure that when I then left consultancy and went back to studying for my PhD, I didn't stop that. Because I didn't want to be left behind. Its effect, PhD is very rewarding, but it could be viewed by some as a bit of a career break. And I didn't want to be left behind from doing that. And so I made sure that it was a lot of pressure at the time, but I put myself under a lot of pressure to get all this extra experience whilst I was still doing my PhD. And I guess that stood me in good stead, because I was able to become chartered environmentalist partway through that PhD process in 2016.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because with your CPD, when you're becoming chartered, you need that continuous element to show during your chartered environmentalist application. So without the breaks that you're mentioning, it obviously allows things to happen a little bit quicker. And you're obviously able to do that within your PhD, which makes a lot of sense. What would you say to other people thinking about a career in the environment and potentially progressing towards the CEnv registration?
Do it.
Easy as that.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, I think there's so many roles out there now. You might not know exactly what role it is that you want to do that's within this space, but you will find something that is both important and grabs your attention. There's not enough young people, particularly within this space, within this sector. And for me, in the water sector, I guess there's a lot of people that are sort of within the sector for their careers. And the more people that we can bring into the environment sector and the water sector that are working within the environment, in particular, is only ever going to be a good thing.
Well, I can only agree with that. We're doing a lot of work at the moment at the Society for the Environment about skills gaps. Young people coming through, or not just young people, but career changes and that kind of thing. New minds coming into all different sectors of the environment sector, if you can call it that, is hugely important at the moment, and there's vast amounts of opportunities. So I'm very pleased you touched on that quite a lot. Now, obviously, we've mentioned that you become a chartered environmentalist via your membership of IAGRI. Obviously, that's the Institution of Agricultural Engineers, fairly engineering-based body. But
I'm not an engineer.
You're not an engineer, right? So, what was the reasoning behind going through IAGRI? You were a member beforehand, I assume. Obviously, it was linked to your degree, master's, was it?
Yeah. So there was definitely that element. They accredited my master's, so that I guess I was exposed to them from early on. But they were so amazing all the way through this process. I was able to. They're quite a small institution, and whilst there's some people could say there's negatives that come from that, for me, that allowed me to tap into vast amounts of experience within the institution. I managed to get onto the mentoring program very, very quickly, and that was key in helping me to gain my chartership. But yeah, you're right. I'm not an engineer, but IAGRI as an institution, they have a lot of engineers within the institution, but they have a big and an ever increasing division which is devoted to soil and water and land-based processes, which is where I fit in really with what I do. Although I do touch on the engineering side, but yeah, it's not my bread and butter. So yeah.
Well, that personable that element makes a huge amount of sense, and if you're able to link with people like Jane Rickson and so on, in terms of your soil science background and learning on that, there's huge amounts of expertise to learn from. And they get, in these huge professional bodies, you might have to jump through quite a few hoops to get through to various people, which might be a bit easier with a smaller body like IAGRI. So it's nice.
I mean, as a a real positive thing from iAgri. They've properly treated me like family. We are like a big family group, which I know that I wouldn't have got anywhere else, and it definitely suited me, and I'll be ever grateful to iAgri. Yeah.
Well, that is good to hear, and a testimonial for iAgri. And from a SocEnv point of view, they are fab. They are really good. So it's really nice for us to have them as members and connections in that way, because it's really good to work with. So, good. Okay. So, future question: what's next for you? Which is very broad, but it's exactly what I've got written down here. So,
yeah, what's next for me? Wow.
Not as in tomorrow. I mean, you could answer as tomorrow. Maybe it's a cup of tea after this. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing that's coming up for Severn Trent, but just the water sector in general, is PR24 at the moment, and that is taking up a lot of it's taken up a lot of my time so far, and I think it's going to be the majority of my time for the next few months. So yeah, this is working out and developing our strategy and our investment protocol for the 2025 to 2030 period. So what are we going to be doing in our team for catchment management and for farmers and the agricultural sector within that period? So it's a big piece of work, and especially because we've got to decide on it sort of 2 years before you actually go to start delivering it. And so, yeah, you have to pull on quite a lot of different sort of data and a lot of liaison with regulators and other stakeholders as well in order to build a robust plan.
Right, and that's a plan for PR24.
Yes. Right? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the whole company will be doing a PR24 plan. I'm in charge of my section, catchment management.
Yeah. And this is something that each water company needs to do in advance for the time period mentioned.
Okay. Yeah. So every water company will be doing something right now towards it, definitely.
Yeah. And that's to fulfill regulator requirements and going beyond that. Welcome to my lack of knowledge.
Yeah, so there's an element of PR24 is price review. So it's working out the investment needed to deliver both our regulatory statutory requirements, as well as the things which are above and beyond that are what our customers want. So from my point of view, we've got a lot of, in my team, we've got both statutory obligations with regards to the environment. So an example would be for any new treatment that's got to go in at one of our water treatment works, we have to have a catchment management scheme that sits behind it. And then we've also got this sort of statutory plus, or the above and beyond pieces of work, which are nice to have, but there are things that our customers want. So one example might be I'm trying to think now. So like one good example actually is peatland restoration up near Lake Vyrnwy. That's one of the projects that we're exploring at the moment, and what we can do more there. So it's not a statutory requirement, but that's a really good thing for the environment. It's a good thing for our customers as well.
Interesting. So, yeah. Lots of plans, lots of exciting plans by the sound of it. Lots of things to explore and find solutions for. That sounds like your cup of tea by what we've spoken to about recently. Okay, good. Lots of things coming up. Sounds busy. But imagine if for one day in your near future you had access to world leaders. This is the question we ask all of our guests on EnvCast. What would be the thing that you talked to them about and tried to get them to do?
Okay, so I know what I would talk to them about, but I'd get them to do as another matter.
What would they be talking about?
So I know what I'd talk to them about. So this is something that is starting to touch on my professional life as well, but it's really stemmed from my personal life. So I was very lucky growing up. I grew up, it was just a little market town on the border of Oxfordshire, but I had great access to the countryside. And at the time, I didn't know how good my access to this countryside was. There was bridle paths, there's footpaths going out of the town. It's very easy to get access to nature. And I just, at the time, I didn't realise how good I had it, I guess. I'm now living in the countryside, and whilst I definitely appreciate the greenery that I can see out the window right now, I actually feel more closed off than I did when I lived in the little market town. And that's because public footpaths, bridle paths, there's a lot fewer and far between. And so for me, as I've been getting older, I guess, as well, I've been realizing how important access to nature is for me as an individual. But then when you think about inner cities and all the different urban centres around the Midlands area, we're a very densely populated area, and a lot of people live within the urban centres that don't have access to enough green space, and that's, I would be petitioning, I guess. I'd love to petition the world leaders to bring more green space to everybody. I've definitely noted, not just from the COVID period, but I've definitely noted the benefits to my mental well-being and my physical well-being of having access to green space. It doesn't just have to be countryside. It could just be more green parks, more trees lining the streets. Like green suds within cities, just the less hard standing, less concrete, I guess. All of that sort of feeds into the feeling of more green space within an environment.
Well, I can certainly see why you would be getting world leaders to talk about that, because it's hugely important. I mean, especially, you mentioned, when pandemics hit, for example, it's having access to green spaces is vastly important for, getting to know about the environment as a whole, increasing positive well-being.
Yeah, and I think it plays into sort of diversity within this environment space as well. Like we mentioned earlier about we're not getting enough. We're probably getting more and more young people coming into the environment sector than in some other sectors, but we're definitely not getting enough to sustain the number of jobs that are coming out of the environmental sector. And crucially, we're also not getting the diversity. We're getting so actually, I sit on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee of IAGRI, and we're seeing something similar there, in that membership is not as diverse as what we would hope it to be, and what it probably needs to be in order to sustain the innovation and the projects and the development needed within our sector. And I think part of that plays back to this green space and access to nature, because a lot of people don't experience it, and if they don't experience access to nature and they don't feel the benefits of it, then it's harder for them to get into that sort of environmental sector as well. So I think it all sort of feeds together, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. It speaks volumes when you and I are fairly rural based in the Leicestershire countryside, and we feel like we have a lack of access to countryside and green spaces and so on. But yeah, it must be amplified hugely in inner city spaces, and the demographics then tend to change, and it's those issues we need to try and address. So an interesting, thoughtful discussion to conclude, and something for listeners to have a think about once they've finished listening to this podcast, I suppose. So thank you very much for joining us today, Alex. That kind of brings our podcast to a close. It's been very, very interesting talking to you. Thank you for spending the time with us. Now, if you want to hear, or if you want to follow in Alex's footsteps and become a chartered environmentalist and showcase your environmental knowledge, then please check out the IAGRI website, which is iagri.org. That's IAGRE.org. Or you can always go to the Society for the Environment website. If you're already a chartered environmentalist, or you know of an outstanding one, like Alex, maybe, and you'd like to highlight that, we've, as of this release date, the nominations are open for the 2023 SocEnv Awards. So if you wanted to nominate someone or yourself, then go to the SocEnv website and you'll find the details of that. You could be the 2023 Environmental Professional of the Year. Who knows? Next month, we're sticking with the theme of water, and we hope to hear insights from another chartered environmentalist in the water sector, but with a bit of a different angle. So I look forward to seeing you then. And thank you very much again to Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's EnvCast episode. If you'd like to hear more about the Chartered Environmentalist, Registered Environmental Practitioner, or Registered Environmental Technician registrations, please look at our resources available at socenv.org.uk. Alternatively, visit our YouTube channel, where you can find a variety of environmental webinar series, registration guides, and various insights from registrants themselves. Just search for Society for the Environment on YouTube. To keep up to date with what's going on at the Society for the Environment, you can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram via @SocEnv_HQ, and via LinkedIn by searching for Society for the Environment with SocEnv in the brackets. We will release a new EnvCast episode on the first Wednesday of each month, so if you're interested in future podcasts, please do subscribe. You can subscribe and review through a variety of platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Castbox.